Alright, Tāwhaki is ready for a new hero. Or actually, he's already got one. He's just currently stuck in his mother's worry, also known as heaven. To get down there, he needs to climb down the forbidden stairway of the underworld and cross the river of the dead. But before we get there, let's meet our hero, Tāwhaki, son of Matara and Hain Takarua. Now, Tāwhaki was a bit of a problem child. Not only did he kill a man in a fight and then have to hide from his father, but now he's fallen in love with his cousin Punga Rihua. Now, this is no small thing because inter-sibling marriage is strictly prohibited. So much so that if you did it on purpose, you would be banished from the Winua, the land, the sea, and the air, never to return again. But if you're wondering how Tāwhaki knew Punga Rihua was his cousin, well, let me tell you, he didn't. In fact, he didn't even know what a tapu was, which basically means sacred or forbidden. You see, his father had kept many things from him, like the fact that he was half to a god, half mortal, or that his real name was Tāwhaki Maramataka, which means morning light. No, Tāwhaki didn't know any of that. And to make matters worse, his father had made him promise not to go to Rauhenga, also known as the underworld, lest he to succumb to its eternal darkness. So why then does Tāwhaki decide to break both his promises and defy his father by going down to Rohingya to rescue Pungarehu? Well, it's because she has died after falling into a hole while gathering food. Now, if you ask me, it was probably magic, because Punga Rihua was no ordinary woman. She was the daughter of Tama Nui Te Ra, the sun god, and with such godly blood in her veins. The gods had plans for her, plans that did uninclude dying in some mundane way, like a cold and clammy death by falling into a hole. Nope, not at all. Instead, she was taken to Rauhenga, where she lay on the couch of the god of death, making him very uncomfortable. And here's where our boy Tawa comes in. See, Tawa, though he might not have been aware of his true identity, wasn't exactly ignorant. He knew his father was a great chief, the mightiest of them all, and he knew that his father had gone to Rauhenga to retrieve the fire that became the very lifeblood of mankind. Okay, and so Tawa thought that if he went down to the underworld and asked the god of death for Pungariho's body, that the god of death would be inclined to help him because he was the son of his father, right? As soon as Tāwhaki descended into the underworld, the god of death threw him into the same couch that his lover had been lying on moments before, and he began to die. And so Tāwhaki cried out to his father, and this is what happened. Tama Nui Te Ra heard his son's cries, and he sent an Atua, a messenger, to the underworld to check it out. Now the Atua could have easily passed through the gates of the underworld, but being a messenger of the sun god, he was filled with light, and the mere presence of such brightness was enough to burn away the souls of the dead, which would upset the whole balance of nature. So instead, the Atua stayed hidden and watched as Tawa slowly but surely died and turned into a ghost, joining the other spirits in the underworld. The Atua then returned to the sun god and told him everything that he had seen. Atamani Terra was very angry. He grabbed the jawbone of his deceased wife, which just so happened to be a powerful weapon, and he whacked the god of death across the face, knocking him unconscious. Then he took his son's body and revived him with a prayer. And as Tawa emerged from the clutches of death, his skin was covered with tattoos that symbolized his ordeal. And that's where Tawa got his name, Tāwhaki Maramataka, the morning light. Finally understanding his heritage, Tama Nui Te Ra bestowed upon him the powers of the Itua and tasked him with bringing light back into the lives of the people. However, with great power comes great responsibility. To activate his powers, Tawa needed fire, but there was one big problem. After his battle with Tama Nui Te Ra Tangaroa, the god of the sea, had taken the fire and hidden it in the bottom of the ocean. So Tawa did what any demigod would do. He climbed a sacred vine known as the How which stretched up to the heavens and down to the depths of the ocean. Okay? And as he ascended up the vine, he left behind his mortal skin and became a celestial being of pure light. He pulled himself up, step by step, until he reached the top of the vine, where the heavens lay before him. However, there was still a long way to go to reach the abode of the gods. Akata continued onwards. But here's the thing. Climbing this vine was no easy feat. It was fraught with danger at every turn. First, he had to avoid the watchful eyes of the birds that lived in the trees. His keen eyesight and sharp beaks would have made easy prey out of a stray demigod. Luckily, Tāwhaki was swift and sure-footed, managing to evade their grasp. Then he had to contend with the rough bark and slippery moss that covered the trunk of the vine, but he pressed on. However, the greatest danger came from the realm of the dead. As Taha climbed higher and higher, the air grew colder and darker. The sounds of laughter and singing were replaced by the howling of winds and the dripping of water. And suddenly, the vine began to shake violently, as if the very heavens themselves were trying to shake him loose. Pada, that's because the guardian of the underworld was trying to prevent Tāwhaki from escaping its grasp. And so, Tāwhaki clung on for dear life as the vine swayed precariously in the wind. But he was determined to escape the clutches of the underworld. With all his strength, he tightened his grip and refused to let go. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the shaking stopped and the vine grew still once more. Tāwhaki cautiously uncurled his fingers and looked around him. The worst was over. And yet, even as he rejoiced in his small victory, he knew that the hardest part of his journey was still ahead of him. For he had not yet reached the heavens, not even close. In fact, he was still in the realm of the dead. But Tāwhaki was undeterred, took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and continued his ascent. As he climbed, the landscape around him changed. The dark and gloomy realm of the dead gave way to a world of mist and shadows. But through the gloom, Tāwhaki could see a faint glimmer of light in the distance, and, with renewed determination, he surged forward. Just when he thought he couldn't go any higher, his feet hit solid ground. And as the mist cleared, Tāwhaki found himself standing on a lush green mountain. Before him lay a vast expanse of cloud, dotted with palaces and temples. It was a sight that took his breath away. And in that moment, Tāwhaki knew that he had reached the heavens. He had done it. He had escaped the clutches of the underworld and reached the home of the gods. And as he stood there, taking in the beauty of his surroundings, he knew that his journey was far from over. He had brought light back into the lives of the people, but now he had to find a way to keep it there. You see, when Tāwhaki climbed the sacred vine, he left behind his mortal skin and became a celestial being of pure light. But this also meant that he could never return to Earth in his current form. And so Tāwhaki found himself at a crossroads. Could he find a way to restore his mortal body and return to Earth? Or was he destined to spend eternity in the heavens? Well, that's a question for another time, my friends. For now, let us celebrate the fact that Tāwhaki reached the heavens and brought light back into the lives of the people. And as you make your way through the day, remember the lessons of this story. Never give up hope, no matter how dark things may seem. And always strive to bring light into the world, just as Tāwhaki did. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to give a huge shout out to our supporters. Your support helps us bring these stories to life, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you. And speaking of supporters, don't forget to support us if you haven't already. Now, until next time, stay curious, keep creating, and go forth and do awesome things.